So as Lydia mentioned, just a million little tiny decisions go into creating a crowdsourcing project like this. You have to think about how will users react to this, or what is the actual end use of this data sort of before you begin. And it's hard to grapple with all of those decisions. So these balancing scales are just our way of illustrating some of the factors that we considered while creating this indexing project, and also that we continue to grapple with today. So the first sort of set of variables is the verbatim transcription that our volunteers were so used to doing and that people had really become accustomed to doing, versus indexing and thinking about which one would actually be the most useful for this collection. And again, trying to balance those two things. You'll notice, as Lydia showed you, some of the fields within that spreadsheet are actually spaces where we ask people to write exactly what it says. So even our approach that we've arrived at is a bit of a mix of these two things, where we are standardizing some fields and others you should enter as the original person wrote them down. Another set of things that we wanted to consider was, of course, the user experience, thinking about how easily will our volunteers be able to understand this project and understand what to do, versus the work product itself, and thinking about how useful this will be for us internally as we're working on digital humanities projects, thinking about the future, and things like enslaved.org and the open data portal. So you really have to balance those two. If you make a task too difficult, your volunteers won't do it. But again, you have to think about what will be the most useful in the end. And one thing that we really struggled with, Lydia showed our instructions pages there. It's often tempting just to try to give people instructions for every little thing they might encounter, but that's really not possible in collections like this because they are so varied. Each clerk may have had a different way of doing things that may have changed over time. It's really just impossible to offer those exhaustive instructions as much as we might like to. But we've really had luck sort of letting people learn by doing, and that's one of the things that we're able to facilitate in our transcribe-a-thons. It lets people sort of organically understand the process, start to ask questions that can get at some of these sort of little decisions and details that are difficult to explain off the very top of it, but you want people to be careful as they're entering all of that data. It can cause some frustration to let people learn by doing, but I think that sometimes that can be a good friction in a way. We also found ourselves, and this may be more of an internal thing, that we were thinking a lot about balancing these sort of technical approaches, very data-centric approaches, versus the emotional aspects of this work. I think a lot of us, want the Virginia Untold project to really reflect the deep meaning that these documents have to the descendants, and again, to have those deeper discussions about freedom and enslavement in Virginia. So we try to think about both, and we don't want to ignore either one. And again, we were thinking about data extraction from these documents and how the original process would have been dehumanizing for the free people of color versus what we're doing now and the goals of that indexing project, which is more about helping people connect to their ancestors, or analyzing this sort of at scale and how that might be different. So thinking about, again, sort of balancing those technical concerns or technical considerations versus what we hope will be more of the societal impact of this, leading to greater justice and perhaps even reparations down the line. But of course, some of those things are sort of beyond our scope as state employees, but all that we can do is provide this data in the best way possible and encourage people to think deeply about these issues.